from the time that there is an awareness of the existence of the soul, we'll say circa 50,000 BP, until the resolution of the apocalyptic potential, there's something like 50,000 years, which in biological time is only a moment, but it is the entire span of history times 5. In that period, everything hangs in the balance because it is a mad rush from monkeydom to starshiphood. And in the leap across those 25,000 years, energies are released, religions are shot off like sparks, philosophies evolve and die, science arises, magic arises, all of these things which control power with greater and lesser degrees of ethical constancy appear. There is the possibility, as in the metaphor of dying, there is the possibility of mucking it up, of aborting the species transformation into a hyperspatial intellecty. We are now, there can be no doubt that we are now in the final seconds of that crisis, a crisis which involves the end of history, the departure from the planet, the triumph over death, and the release of the individual from matter. We are, in fact, closing distance with the most profound event a planetary ecology can encounter, which is the freeing of life from the dark chrysalis of matter. The old metaphor of psyche as the butterfly is a species-wide metaphor. We must undergo a metamorphosis in order to survive the momentum of the historical forces already in motion. I want to tell you a campfire story about a poor but humble primate who came from the fringes of the action, a minor member of the flora and fauna of this planet who embarked on a long and arduous journey into time and had many adventures along the way, and had many allies along the way, and overcame great challenges to attain the gift difficult to come upon, the grail, if you will, or the self. I mean, all fans of Joseph Campbell are familiar with this metaphor of the hero's journey. And what's interesting is we actually have made that hero's journey. We are, all of us tonight, sons and daughters of the ancestral heroes who overcame drought, glaciation, disease, famine, earthquake, migration, you name it. They didn't drop the ball, and thanks to them, we're here tonight. And normally this is the beginnings of this great journey are completely cloaked in mystery. It's taught in orthodox anthropology courses. No one knows the factors which impelled human beings to leave the primate existence in the canopies of the great forests of Africa and to adopt new styles of life in the grasslands, new diets, trading in vegetarianism for being omnivores, trading in a life of fruitarian luxury for a life of hunting, struggle, migration, and natural selection in an extremely harsh environment. I believe that the reason that this seems so mysterious to straight primatologists and anthropologists is because they have been unwilling to look carefully at the role that plants played in this adventure, particularly the role that psychoactive plants may have played, and then, most appropriately for this gathering tonight, the role that certain species of psychoactive mushrooms. We now are the inheritors of a planet which is dying under anesthesia. Our entire cultural crisis is predicated on the fact that we cannot feel or connect with the consequences of our history, that we have behaved very badly, we of the high-tech societies. We have trashed gender relationships. We have trashed Aboriginal societies. We have cut down the rainforests. We have robbed our own children of a future as rich as the future that we expect ourselves to enjoy. There isn't even a name for this sin where you destroy the opportunity of your own children. I mean, no society has been that perverse. And we're doing it under a massive infusion of alcohol laced with monotheistic moral propaganda. What is the antidote to this? Well, it's what I call the archaic revival. It's something that's been going on throughout most of the 20th century, but with increasing depth and urgency. It's that we must reach back into the past, to the last sane moment that we ever knew, and figure out what was going on then, and get with the program and attempt to recover some amount of cultural equilibrium and balance. And I believe that, using the broad brush of generalization, we could say all our problems can be traced down to ego. Ego lies behind private property. It lies behind the domination of women by men. It lies behind dollar chasing. It lies behind all of the maladaptive behaviors, the arms race, the whole thing. It lies behind all of the maladaptive behaviors that are pushing us toward planetary toxification and species Armageddon. Build communities of like-minded people and diminish the almighty sense of ego. And psilocybin does this very effectively in two ways. First of all, it dissolves boundaries between people, and another way of saying ego is that I strongly distinguish between you and me, That's what ego tells you, is who you are and how important you are and how you're not her or him or that, you're this. Psilocybin tends to dissolve that language-reinforced misperception. And the other thing it does is it shows you that behind your eyebrows is a world richer by far than any of the crap that's being peddled on Rodeo Drive or Fifth Avenue in New York City or anywhere else. In other words, it shows you the pathetic nature of materialism by reintroducing you to the reality of the spirit, not as a religious abstraction that's used to beat you over the head to follow somebody's moral recipe, but as a felt experience of the indwelling of an extreme power, that a power that connects you to all the life of the past on this planet, to the planetary future, to the universe at large. So really, it's a rediscovery of our birthright as human beings. History is a bad deal. It's a mass of pottage. It's broken machines and broken dreams because we have projected our value system out into matter, and matter has not responded in a satisfying way, and so we're then dysfunctionally neurotic, always seeking, never finding. You see, what the psychedelic is going to do is it's going to destroy your whole world, your whole conception of your world. And some people, that's tremendously liberating. They say, wonderful, at last I'm free of it. Other people say, my God, now I'm hopelessly mad. I have nothing left to cling to. I've really done it this time. And so that's almost an aesthetic judgment. Whether you like watching your world shredded before your eyes and made into nonsense, if that makes you feel liberated and secure, then you can sign up for this carnival. If that alarms you, I think best to stick to the tried and true. It's not for people of weak psychic constitution. And what shamanism is about is, I know someone who says of the mushrooms, my goal with taking mushrooms is always to be able to stand more. And they don't mean higher doses, they mean more of what it reveals. And I feel like that. The mushroom speaks. I didn't really stress this in my talk, but the confounding fact about these mushrooms is that they speak to you in plain English. And this is completely unexpected. How can such a thing be? One is dumbfounded in the presence of this. And yet, by being able to have an I-thou relationship to this thing, you open up yourself to what is essentially a magical dimension, a dimension of allyship with this thing. I come to this completely as a rationalist. I am more scientist, more rationalist than anything else. I am very uncomfortable with my position in the New Age. I hate all that stuff. The quartz crystal suppositories and the channeling of dead Egyptians and all this horrible stuff which goes on. It's just an affront to the thinking mind. But when I encountered these psychedelics, I said, my God, skepticism is the proper path. And I believe this. It's not to believe, it's to test. I said to the mushroom once, why us? Meaning my brother and me. Why us? And it said, because you don't believe in anything. You're not a believer. And so it's a real thing. It's a real mystery. It will not yield to reason. It's a tremendously well-kept secret. Yes, first come the dancing mice, the little candies, the colored grids, and so forth and so on. But what eventually happens, quickly, like 10 minutes later, is there is an entity in the trance, in the vision. There is a mind there waiting that speaks good English and invites you up into its room. And what it is it's a voice in the head that people strove to attain for 1,000 years. This was the sine qua non of intellectual accomplishment in the Greco-Roman world. And the Logos told you the right way to live. And this is sort of what you get with psilocybin. You get a voice that can confound you with the depth and brilliance of its answers. This is what you want. And I've had over and over the experience of showing somebody what 5 grams is, and they're appalled. They say, my God, you can't be serious. I take a fifth that much, a fourth that much. Yeah, well, that's the problem. That's why you don't have elves in the attic and bats in the belfry like I do. A lot of people have said you're a hallucination nut. You're obsessed with hallucination. I freely admit it. But I will defend my obsession with vision. I think the world wants to be seen. I think Blake was right that the divine imagination is something beheld. And for me, the visions are the proof that this is not my mind. And the visions are the proof that this is not simply chemical chaos in the nervous system. And when we communicate with each other and understand each other, we instinctively reach for visual metaphors. I see what you mean. Look here, fella. She painted a picture. His words were so beautiful. It means that we really associate meaning with seeing something.
This is why the psychedelic experience and psychedelics are so important. It's because they are tools for understanding and revisioning the reality in which we all live. The personal growth is a wonderful thing and will naturally follow along, but it's more important than that. It's a way to make a new world that is Taoistic, feminine, free of anxiety, and in great anticipation of further stages of completion lying into the future. That's where the mystery, the transcendental object, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is waiting. And I think that's the job of each of us, to show our best toys and our best tricks that lift us and our friends to higher and higher levels. And there is no end to this bootstrapping process. The future of the human mind and body and the future of humans together is endlessly bright. Keep the faith, recognize each other, and maybe I should close with a little line from Gary Snyder, if I can remember it. He said, learn the flowers, travel light, stay together.
I am not a guru. I have no particular axe of my own to grind, or at least not with great vigor. The point to be made here is that psychedelics are not an ideology or a position. They are an experience. And an experience is something that we have very intimately ourselves. So it's not something you can teach people or draw too many general conclusions from. It's an experience, but it's an experience that I feel people should have. And when I see a political system or a set of cultural values that are denying people this experience, then I feel like some kind of human rights abuse is taking place. The tension between so-called straight culture and psychedelic culture is a tension over values. Psychedelics challenge the assumptions of any cultural or political system, and that makes them dangerous to every cultural and political system. So if there's anything, a Marxist dictatorship, a high-tech industrial democracy, or a theocracy, they can all get together on one thing, which is psychedelic drugs are a knife poised at the heart of community values. Well, this is just simply nonsense. And then all the reasons brought forth are, in a sense, a red herring. The psychedelics are among the safest substances known for human ingestion, considering the depth of their impact on human mental functioning. The fact that you pick yourself up 6, 7, 8 hours later and go on about your business with an expanded point of view is quite remarkable. People have a right to get stoned. They have a right to think and explore their own minds. This is as intimate a part of their being as their sexuality. And in any culture which mitigates that is clearly afraid of a full and fair and open dialogue about what reality is and what real human values ought to be.
Now, Dr. Hoffman has been lauded here this evening for his invention of LSD. Certainly this is what he will be remembered for over the long centuries ahead. But as a matter of fact, he is a thinker of extreme breadth and depth. It was he, working with Carl Ruck and Gordon Wasson, who proposed that it was actually psychoactive ergot alkaloids that lay behind the Eleusinian mysteries, and thereby rub the nose of classical scholarship in the fact that the foundation and the wellspring of the Western imagination, which was the mystery cults of ancient Greece, that foundation is firmly rooted in a psychedelic experience. that when we leave these things behind, we leave behind our cultural birthright, no less than when the Amazonian Indian deserts his home village for the sawmills. We too were once tribal people who lived in the light of mysteries that came to us mediated by shamans and created out of the magic of the natural world. It was Albert Hoffman who synthesized psilocybin for the first time and described its absolute structural characteristics. This is a man who is astride both the synthetic and natural product chemistry of the 20th century like no one else. His research has revealed the unexpected fact that there are biodynamic alkaloids in our environment, in our food chain, indeed in our history, that argue that we are the bearers of a great promise, that the future of consciousness can be endlessly bright. In the future, it will be unimaginable that governments once regulated the substances that people use to explore personal growth. It is the mark of a barbarous culture, and we are here to raise a light, to say truth is not so easily swept aside. One doesn't just say no to truth. Truth requires engagement, it requires courage, it requires a sense of where we have been and of where we are going.
We expect to command our body. We expect the mental will to order the monkey flesh into action, and it will follow. The body is the nexus of the mystery of life, and our culture takes us out of the body and sells our loyalty into political systems, into religions, into inanimate objects and machines, collections, so forth and so on. The felt experience of the body is what the psychedelics are handing back to us. That's why it's called escape, because it's escape from HBO, from walking the mall, from seeing what's on the tube, from consuming trash media. It's escape from all of that into the authenticity of the body. This is why sexuality is so edgy in this society. They'd make it illegal if they but could figure out how. It's the one drug they can't tear from our grip, and so they lay a guilt trip about it. But sexuality and psychedelics, by carrying us back to an authentic sense of the body, carry us back to the domain of authentic values. And more, the message that people are getting as they avail themselves of the psychedelic experience is that it is not a journey into the human unconscious or into the ghost bardos of our chaotic civilization. It's a journey into the presence of the Gaian mind, that the earth is a coherent whole. It is a thinking, feeling, intending being, that in terms of our value structures, it would be foolish to image as anything other than female. And when cultural values, created by male dominance and science and linearity and so forth and so on, when those values are dissolved, what is waiting there is this incredibly poignant experience of matrix, what James Joyce called the mama matrix most mysterious, nothing more than our bodies and the earth out of which our bodies came. History, as we have lived it in the West, has been a turning of our back on that. And now history has failed.
Western cultural institutions, having become global cultural institutions, now show themselves to be adequate to inspire, lead, or carry anyone into a future worth living in. At this moment, then, this reconnecting to the Gaian mind becomes a kind of moral imperative. I will never forget my first DMT trip because I was such a case going into it. I mean, if you had known me when I was 19 years old, I was into Jean-Paul Sartre, Alfred Camus, Marxism, Freud. I was a jerk. And I came down from it and I said, I can't believe it. That was all I could say for about 20 minutes. I was like in shock. I said, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Jesus, I can't believe it. And I said, I've got to go back to square one. All these people I dismissed, all these people who say the universe is made of levels, who say there are disincarnate intelligences, who say that death is not simply the yawning grave. I had dismissed all those people as crybabies and sob sisters, and I said, no, the point of view that I previously dismissed is apparently what's actually happening. So in a single experience, I was converted from naive rationalism, realism, reductionism to my present position, whatever it is. Really, all I've done is worked out the implications of the personal implications for me of the DMT flash, and I've also tried to create linguistic models of it. So the worth of it is that it shows you beyond a shadow of a doubt that the world is made of magic. That's what the world is made of. Not natural law, not interlocking cause and effect, not any of these things that are normally assumed. The world is magic, not a little bit, 100%. Every atom from one end of this cosmos to the other is magic, magic, magic. Certain concerns just die in the first 30 seconds of the DMT flash and can never be brought back, to my mind. I felt in danger of dying from astonishment when I did it, and I do every time I do it. I mean, I don't know how they keep the lid on this stuff. I mean, I think that this is the secret that wants to be told.